Hello, I'm David Saba, founder and CEO of Empowering Agents to Prosper. This is the third broadcast of our 30-day Realtor Challenge called To Prosper. I am, uh, I've been in real estate for 18 years, and the subject of today's broadcast is what is your why? Well, I'm going to tell you a lot about what is my why. Why am I in real estate? Why do I like being in real estate? And why do I do my best to help my clients with their real estate needs? Now, I was, uh, I, I grew up here in Savannah, Georgia. I went to the Naval Academy, and my senior year, I was charged with being company commander over 120 midshipmen at the United States Naval Academy. Now, I felt a huge responsibility to those men. We did not have women at the Naval Academy until the year after I graduated, so I apologize to you women if I keep saying men. But these guys were, between 17 and maybe 23, 24 when they graduated. And it was unbelievably like uh, pledging for a fraternity for 11 months when you were what we called a plebe, or basically a freshman at the Naval Academy. And the all the upper classes actually had legal authority over these plebes. So it was even worse than pledging for a fraternity. And our mission with these young men, these young plebes, was to teach them discipline and teach them and train them and get them started on the path to becoming an officer in the United States Navy. Unfortunately, when you have 120 young men in your company and you got plebes that they've got legal authority on over, instead of training, a lot of times you found harassment. And my job as company commander, at least as I saw it, was to let's get back to training and discipline. And instead of having fun teasing and harassing plebes, let's do our job and teach them something, teach them discipline, and not how can we harass them, and some of these kids that be taken drive them to tears from the harassment. So that was my job as company commander. I've always considered it my job to mentor and teach the people that come under me. After the Naval Academy, I went to flight school and then got sent to Sicily as a pilot. And as a young ensign, just commissioned a year before, I was put in as first lieutenant, which meant I was responsible for maintaining the facilities, but also for continuing the training of young men and women that had just gotten out of boot camp and were at their first duty assignment. Well, they didn't know much about the Navy yet. They'd been pretty much harassed by their drill instructor in boot camp, and we tried to mentor them in a more gentle fashion. So my job was to be a leader, to train them, to teach them discipline, to figure out where they fit in the squadron. And most of the men and women in our squadron were maintenance technicians. They actually maintained these multi-million dollar aircraft. And I tell you what, I had a great incentive to make sure they knew what they were doing, because I was flying those airplanes and I kind of liked it when they worked right, because I didn't feel prepared to crash and burn. Um, In fact, I got them prepared and figured out where they belonged in the squadron. Some of them would become a yeoman, other, would go to the training department and other various duties, but most of them were uh, maintenance technicians. And in fact, after first lieutenant, I took over the aircraft division, which was the vast majority of the maintenance department, and I had 85 men and women working for me there. And we had to teach them how to maintain aircraft. So, of course, I had more senior people, chiefs, and first class petty officers in my departments, but it was my responsibility to oversee everything and make sure everybody was being trained. Something very interesting when I talk about maintaining the aircraft properly. I had a training flight one night, and I had several young men and women in the aircraft with me just for orientation purposes to see what it was like to actually go out and fly in one of these things. And the aircraft I flew was a cargo plane. I could carry 32 passengers and or cargo. Anyway, this young man, after we were up at altitude and things were calmed down, he came up to the cockpit to see what it was like actually flying the airplane. And, he was so impressed and so excited to be on this flight. And he was actually from the intermediate maintenance department, which was not part of our squadron, but it's where we sent engines that needed major maintenance. So we'd take them off the airplane and send them over to AIMD, and this young man worked on them over there. And he said, you know what? I never stopped to think before that people put the engines I work on airplanes and go fly in them. I'm going to start putting the right parts on them. So you can imagine what we were dealing with in trying to discipline and mentor these young men and women that were learning how to maintain airplanes. Well, after the Navy, I worked for a couple of multinational corporations and traveled around the world quite a bit in those. And again, I had people working for me that I had to mentor and teach how to provide a good service in the job they were in. I was actually head of information technology at my first assignment after the military, and I had about 20 people working for me that wrote the programs that made the company work. Now, we were a multinational corporation. I actually shut down the mainframe computer, brought in new computers and all new software, and my people had to install that software, maintain it, and make it work. Well, I found pretty quickly that software engineers don't like talking and working with people. They would rather work with a computer. The only problem with that is if you're writing software that, say, accounting uses, it's kind of important that you find out what the accountants need it to do. But they didn't want to do that. They just would write programs that did what they thought it should do without any knowledge of accounting, which is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. And to tell you the truth, these days I'm very frustrated with software. I used to love computers, but now I find it to be a huge frustration because people that write the software aren't doing a very good job of figuring out what it should do, testing it. That was one of my pet peeves, is software engineers writing programs and not testing them. I had a young fellow working for me that wrote the software that was on the computer in the office of the chief executive officer of this $30 billion corporation. Well, I was responsible for that software, but this kid working for me was the one writing it. And so I'd get a call from the CEO at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it'd say, my sales report's wrong and it won't come up and I can't get the sales information from yesterday. What is wrong with you guys down there? So when uh, my software engineer would come in and say, hey, Trey, uh, did you make a change on the CEO's sales information software yesterday? It'd say, I sure did. I said, well, it didn't work. Did you test it? No, sir. Well, why didn't you test it? Well, it should have worked. I said, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You probably don't intentionally write programs that shouldn't work, but as somebody who's also written many programs, I know that it's very rare that they work the first time, so you need to test them. Okay, so the next week I get the same call from the CEO. My sales program's not working. So Trey comes in the office a little while later and said, hey, Trey, did you test that software you put on the CEO's desk? Yes, sir, just like you told me to. I said, well, how come it's not working? Oh, that's probably because I made another change after I tested it. Well, did you test it again? No. Why not? Should have worked. So, it's a real challenge to mentor some of these people and train them up on how to provide quality service in their job. Well, let's get down to real estate. That's what we're supposed to be talking about today. As a realtor, I run a real estate team and I train realtors right out of real estate school how to be a good buyer's agent or listing agent on my team. Now, unfortunately, I don't know how it is in your state, but in Georgia, you come out of real estate school knowing a lot about real estate law, but without a clue of how to buy or sell property other than the contracts and so forth. But how do you market them? How do you work with your clients, etc.? So I've kind of have to train them pretty much from scratch. Somebody that knows a little bit about real estate law and terminology, how to succeed in real estate. And the way you succeed is you have to provide better service than the next realtor. And then you will gain a reputation for getting homes sold quickly, to providing service to communicate with your clients so they know what's going on, so they know, hey, I cleaned up my house for that showing yesterday. How did it go? Well, if you're not, I can tell you in my area, I don't know how it is in yours, but in my area, we have to call the agent that showed the house 5 to 10 times to get any feedback. But you know what? My sellers are very unhappy if they don't get feedback. So we do whatever's necessary to get feedback. And if we're not getting it the first day, we're keeping them informed. Hey, we called the showing agent again. We texted them, we emailed them. They promised to get back to us. But you've got to provide that service. One of the first young ladies that was on my team came to me. She had just gotten her license. Her husband had left her and was providing absolutely no support. She had 4 small kids. 2 of them were still in diapers. There was no way she could call leads, go out and show homes and so forth with 2 kids still at home in diapers. The other 2 were a little older and went to school, but something had to be done with those 2. What I did is my wife and I put her on the team as a real estate assistant, making $250 a week, which by design was how much daycare charged her to put her 2 kids in daycare during the week. And I mentored her. I taught her real estate. I took her with me when I was showing homes. I went with her the first few times she was showing homes. I taught her how to provide outstanding service. Fortunately, she was highly motivated and highly service oriented herself, or she wouldn't have made you. You can't do much with people that aren't motivated and won't do the things you tell them. But I'm here to tell you, in her first year in real estate, she made over $100,000. So she was doing very well, and it is uh, possible to bring people along like that, and that's what I do on my team. Now, not everybody on my real estate team here in Savannah lasts, because some of them are pretty good at the interview process, but when it comes down to actually showing up for work and so forth, they're not there. Now, generally in our area here in Savannah, there are a lot of agents that aren't that interested in doing their job, and they're doing a disservice to their clients when they refuse to answer the phone when I want to show a house on a weekend. And come Monday, they finally, I want to call them on Monday. I said, hey, I'm still trying to show your home. Don't you want it sold? And some of them will respond, hey, the reason I'm in real estate is so I can set my own hours, and I don't work after 5 o'clock, and I don't work on weekends. And I tell them, hey, lady or fella, you're in the wrong business, because that's not going to work in real estate. I hope this is just a hobby to you, because you're only going to make hobby income here. So anyway, service is key, especially in real estate. I'm sure you've noticed, as I have, in most industries, whether it's fast food or just any other restaurant, grocery stores, department stores, about anywhere you go, the idea of providing good service and knowing what you're doing is not at its highest level right now. So our mission is to be different and to be the ones providing that high level of service. And you know what? That makes it easy to do extremely well in real estate, because not many realtors are providing the kind of service they can. So you can establish yourself with a great reputation, have a boatload of 5-star reviews, and do very well in real estate. Okay, that's about the end of what I've got to say today, but I would encourage you, at the end of this video, there's going to be an end screen with a QR code on that. If you haven't signed up on my private Facebook page, 30-Day Realtor Challenge, I encourage you to do that and see all 4 of my videos, and we'll go on with something else after we do the 4 go live videos. We've got one more after this one. Will be next Monday. If you'd rather just have the URL and type it in instead of the QR code, check the comments below this video posting on Facebook, and it will be there. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a blessed day. I'm Dave Saba, founder and CEO of Empowering Agents to Prosper.